Most men build cabins, most men build sheds, most men spend years planning, saving, arguing with permits, fighting contractors, and after all that, leaks, cold floors, walls that crack, roofs that collapse under a single heavy snowfall. I've been there 3 times, and every single time I told myself never again. Then someone sent me a photo, 3 steel arches sitting in the middle of a frozen field in Alaska, snow everywhere, -30 outside, and inside those 3 units, warm, dry, comfortable, 0 complaints from the men living in them. I didn't believe it at first. Nobody does. That's why I flew out there myself. I walked through every unit. I talked to the men using them. I checked every weld, every seal, every inch of insulation. And what I found completely changed the way I think about off-grid living, emergency housing, and mobile shelter forever. This is not a tiny home video. This is not about minimalism or van life or some influencer's weekend cabin. This is about 3 battle-tested, road-legal, steel-bodied Quonset huts on wheels that have survived some of the most brutal winters on the planet. And the men inside them have not complained once. Not once. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why these 3 units are different, what makes them nearly indestructible, how much they cost, who they're built for, and whether one of them belongs on your land. Let's go. Before we get into the 3 units, you need to understand the problem. Because if you don't understand the problem, you won't understand why these Quonsets are such a big deal. Most men who get into off-grid living or tiny home ownership start with good intentions. They research, they plan, they buy land, they invest in a structure, whether that a prefab cabin, a converted shipping container, a traditional tiny house on wheels, or a shed they converted themselves. And within the first year, something breaks. Not something minor, something critical. The roof leaks, the insulation fails, the frame twists because it wasn't built for movement, and someone tried to relocate the unit. The windows seal poorly and moisture gets in. Mold starts growing inside the walls. The heating system can't keep up with real winter temperatures. Not -5, not -15, but -30, -40. The kind of cold that doesn't care about your R-value claims and your YouTube research. I've spoken to hundreds of men in this space. Homesteaders, hunters setting up base camp, farmers housing workers, veterans buying rural land for the first time. And almost every single one of them has the same story. They bought something that looked good on paper and fell apart in real conditions. That's the problem. And that problem is exactly what these 3 Quonset huts on wheels were designed to eliminate. So what exactly is a Quonset hut, and why on wheels? A Quonset hut is a semicircular arch structure made from corrugated steel. The design goes back to World War II, when the United States military needed a shelter that could be shipped anywhere, assembled fast, and survive everything. Artillery blasts nearby, tropical storms, Arctic conditions, desert heat. The arch shape is the key. There are no flat surfaces for snow to pile up on. There are no corners for wind to catch. The load distributes evenly around the entire curve. A Quonset hut doesn't fight the weather. It redirects it. Now take that military-grade design. Mount on a heavy-duty gooseneck trailer with dual axles. Add real insulation inside the steel shell. Add wood panel framing around the windows and door openings for thermal break and aesthetic warmth. Add a wood-burning stove with a chimney pipe through the roof. Make it fully road legal, towable by any heavy-duty pickup truck, and deployable on any flat surface within minutes of arrival. That is what you're looking at in this video. That is what those 3 units are. And the fact that 3 of them are sitting side by side in that Alaskan field, fully occupied, fully functional, with 0 complaints from the men inside, that tells you everything. Let's talk about the construction first, because this is where most people get surprised. The outer shell is corrugated galvanized steel. This is not sheet metal. This is not aluminum siding. Corrugated galvanized steel is the same material used on commercial grain silos, military installations, and industrial warehouses. It does not rust easily. It does not crack under freeze-thaw cycles. It does not warp under UV exposure. It does not burn. And when you form into an arch, it becomes structurally rigid in a way that flat steel never could be. The geometry itself creates the strength. The trailer frame underneath is built from heavy steel I-beam. The gooseneck hitch at the front is rated for serious towing loads. The dual axle configuration distributes the weight of the unit evenly, which means you can tow this thing on a dirt road, a gravel path, or a frozen lake access road without the frame twisting or the structure shifting. The windows you see in the thumbnail, those warm, glowing wood-framed openings, are not decorative. They're triple pane rated for Arctic conditions. The wood framing around them serves as a thermal break between the cold steel shell and the interior living space. Without that thermal break, the steel would conduct cold directly to the interior surface, and you'd have condensation problems all winter. The wood eliminates that pathway. Simple engineering. Enormous practical difference. The door system is heavy, insulated, and weather-sealed on all four edges. No gaps, no drafts. The kind of seal you'd expect on a professional cold storage unit, not a tiny home. And then there's the stove. Every unit has a wood-burning stove positioned strategically inside, with a double-wall stainless chimney pipe exiting through the steel roof via a seal flashing collar. This is not a decorative fireplace. This is a heat source capable of warming the interior from -30 to above 70 degrees Fahrenheit in under 45 minutes. The men using these units in Alaska confirmed that number themselves. Now, let's walk through all three units individually. Because while they share the same core design, each one is configured differently, and understanding those differences will help you figure out which one fits your situation. The first unit is the largest of the three. It runs 24 feet of interior length on the trailer deck, with the arch rising to a peak of about 9 feet at the center. That gives you enough headroom to stand fully upright anywhere in the middle third of the space. The layout inside is a single open room with a sleeping loft built above the entrance section, a small kitchen counter with a propane burner setup, a composting toilet behind a curtain partition, and the wood stove centered along the back wall. This unit is being used as a full-time base camp for a hunting operation. 2 men rotate through it on week-long shifts during the season. They told me the interior temperature never dropped below 62 degrees Fahrenheit on any night, even when outside temperatures hit -28. They're not using any supplemental electric heat, just a wood stove, fired twice a day. The insulation between the steel shell and the interior wall paneling is spray foam, 2.5 inches, with a radiant barrier layer on the interior side. The combination of spray foam and radiant barrier is what makes that performance possible. The second unit is mid-sized, 18 feet of usable interior on the trailer, same arch profile, slightly lower loft. This one is configured as worker housing for a remote agricultural operation. 2 bunks, a compact wood stove, a small folding table, storage shelving along the curved walls. One of the men who spent 3 months in this unit during the winter told me, and I'm quoting him directly, that it was the most comfortable temporary housing he had ever used in 12 years of seasonal work. He said the only complaint he had was that there was no shower, and the owner solved it by placing a small propane camp shower unit in a wooden enclosure attached to the outside of the trailer. Problem solved. The third unit is the smallest and the most mobile-focused. 14 feet of interior space, lighter total weight, configured for a single occupant. This one belongs to a man who uses it for solo wilderness expeditions. He tows it to a new location every few weeks, drops on flat ground, connects his propane line, lights the stove, and he's home. He told me he has deployed this unit in 3 different states in the last 8 months. He's had it through 2 blizzards, 1 ice storm, and 4 weeks of temperatures that never rose above 0 Fahrenheit during daylight hours. His total complaints? 0. His words, not mine. 3 units. 3 different use cases, 3 different men in 3 different situations. The same result every single time. Now, let's talk about what makes these Quonsets perform so far above everything else in this price range, because there are 5 specific engineering decisions that separate them from every competitor I've evaluated. First, the arch geometry. As I said earlier, the semicircular form distributes structural load in a way that flat-roofed or gabled structures cannot match. During the ice storm that hit the third unit, over 14 inches of wet heavy ice accumulated on surrounding structures. Flat roof sheds and the area collapsed. The Quonset arch shed the ice load naturally as it melted slightly at the contact point and slid off the sides. No structural stress. No damage. Second, the spray foam insulation system. Most tiny homes use bad insulation, fiberglass or mineral wool, stuffed between framing members. Bad insulation has gaps. It has compression problems. It loses R value over time as it settles. Spray foam fills every cavity, adheres to the steel substrate, creates an air barrier and a vapor barrier simultaneously, and does not settle or compress over decades of use. The R value you install on day 1 is the R value you have on year 10. Third, the gooseneck trailer platform. A gooseneck hitch connects to the truck's rear axle rather than the bumper. This gives you significantly more stability at highway speeds, significantly more weight capacity, and a much tighter turn radius than a conventional ball hitch trailer. This matters when you're navigating Forest Service roads or backing into a tight spot on uneven terrain. Fourth, the radiant barrier layer. Most people don't know about this. A radiant barrier is a reflective foil material installed on the interior-facing surface of the insulation. It reflects radiant heat back into the living space instead of allowing it to pass through the wall and escape to the outside. In a structure this small, that reflective layer makes a measurable difference in how hard the stove has to work to maintain interior temperature. Less wood burned, less work for the occupant, more consistent interior temperature. Fifth, the triple-pane Arctic windows. Windows are the weakest thermal link in any cold weather structure. Single-pane windows lose heat at roughly 10 times the rate of an insulated wall. Double-pane improves that significantly. Triple-pane, with the argon or krypton gas filled between the panes, takes it to a level where the window surface itself doesn't create a cold zone in the room. You can sit next to one of these windows at -20 outside and not feel a cold draft. That is the difference between a structure you can actually live in and a structure you're just surviving in. Now, the question every man is asking right now, what does this cost? I'm going to give you real numbers, not estimates, not ranges, not the kind of vague pricing you see on most YouTube channels where they say it depends and never actually tell you anything useful. The smallest unit, the 14-foot solo configuration, runs between $18,000 and $22,000 depending on the trailer spec and the interior finish level you choose. For that price, you get the steel shell of the trailer, the spray foam insulation, the triple pane windows, the wood stove and chimney, the interior wall paneling, and the sleeping loft if you want it. The mid-size 18-foot unit runs between $24,000 and $30,000. Same inclusions, larger footprint, option for dual bunk configuration, or open floor plan. The large 24-foot unit runs between $32,000 and $42,000, depending on options. This is the one being used as a hunting base camp, and for that application, the price is completely justifiable when you consider what a comparable fixed hunting cabin costs to build on remote land. Permits, foundation, framing, roofing, insulation, utilities rough in. You're looking at $60,000 to $100,000 minimum for a fixed structure of similar livability. The Quonset delivers comparable livability, moves with you, and requires no permit in most jurisdictions because it's classified as a vehicle on a trailer. That last point is critical. In most states and provinces, a structure on a road-legal trailer is classified as a recreational vehicle or portable structure, not a building. That means no building permit required, no zoning approval in most rural areas, no inspections. You tow it to your land, you park it, you live in it. That is a legal and financial advantage that most men in this space completely underestimate. Let's talk about the Airbnb and income angle, because several men asked me about this specifically. Unique off-grid accommodations on Airbnb are currently one of the highest performing listing categories in rural areas. Tree houses, yurts, geodesic domes, and, increasingly, steel arch cabins and Quonset huts are commanding premium nightly rates because they offer something a hotel never can: the experience of genuine wilderness shelter combined with actual comfort. A man who owns 2 Quonset units in a rural mountain area is currently renting both of them on a booking platform at $220 per night. His average monthly occupancy across both units is about 70%. That's roughly $9,000 per month in gross revenue from 2 units that cost him a combined $58,000 to acquire and place. He expects to clear his full investment within 14 months. After that, every dollar is profit. I'm not telling you this to sell you a dream. I'm telling you this because of the real, documented outcome from a real man using these exact units. And if you're sitting on rural land that you're not currently monetizing, this is one of the most practical paths to generating income from that land without building a permanent structure or taking on a massive construction project. Who is this actually built for? Let me be specific, because this is not for everyone, and I want to be honest with you. This is built for the man who needs a serious, permanent quality shelter that also needs to move. The man who hunts or traps in remote areas and needs a real base camp. Not a wall tent he has to heat all night just to survive. The man who owns agricultural land and needs seasonal worker housing that doesn't require a building permit and can be repositioned between properties. The man who is building toward an off-grid homestead and needs a livable structure now while he works on the permanent build, without dumping money into a temporary solution that he'll throw away in 2 years. The man who bought rural land and wants to generate income from it immediately without a massive capital investment or construction timeline that drags on for years. The man who is simply done with the cold, done with the noise, done with the cost of modern living and wants out, but wants out smart, not desperate. If you are one of those men, this is worth your serious attention. There are also a few things these units are not, and I respect you enough to tell you that directly. They are not luxury accommodations. The interior is functional, warm, and well-built, but it is not a finished apartment. If you need granite countertops and a rainfall shower, this is not your structure. They are not urban solutions. These are designed for rural land, not city lots or suburban backyards, where HOA rules and zoning restrictions will shut you down immediately, and they are not maintenance-free forever. The galvanized steel shell will last decades with minimal care, but the wood framing around the windows and doors needs to be checked and resealed every few years in harsh climates. The trailer bearings need to be inspected and greased annually if you're moving the unit regularly. The wood stove needs a chimney sweep once per heating season. None of that is excessive maintenance, but it is maintenance, and you need to go in with that understanding. Here's where I want to step back and talk about something that very few channels in the space ever address. And it's the real reason these 3 units have 0 complaints. It's not just the engineering. The engineering is excellent, yes. But the reason these men have 0 complaints is that for the first time, the shelter they're using matches the life they're actually living. Not the life they thought they wanted. Not the life they saw on some Instagram feed. The actual life. The cold mornings, the long drives, the physical work, the need for real warmth at the end of a hard day. Most men in this country are living in structures that were designed by someone else, for someone else's idea of what a good life looks like. A house in a suburb, a rented apartment in a city, a manufactured home on a rented lot. These are not structures that were built around what you actually need. They were built around what was convenient to sell you. These Quonsets were built around a different question. Not what can we sell, but what does a man actually need to survive and function in a harsh environment? The answer to that question is warmth, structural integrity, mobility, and simplicity. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And when a shelter is built to answer that question honestly, the result is exactly what you're seeing in this video. 3 units, multiple men, brutal winter conditions, 0 complaints. So, where do you go from here? If you own land and you've been trying to figure out how to use it, whether for personal use, income generation, worker housing, or just having a serious base camp for your outdoor work, I want you to think seriously about what you've seen in this video, not as entertainment, as a practical option. The numbers work. The engineering works. The real-world performance record is there. I've shown it to you, not from a brochure, not from a manufacturer's spec sheet, but from 3 actual units in actual use in one of the coldest regions on the continent. I will put information in the description below about where to learn more and how to find builders who produce this type of structure. I'm not affiliated with any manufacturer. I don't take commissions. I don't do paid reviews. I'm showing you this because I believe it's one of the most practical shelter solutions available to working men right now at this price point in this environment. Before you build anything permanent, before you spend $60,000 on a cabin that's going to be a nightmare to permit and a year to finish, before you buy another piece of cheap portable shelter that falls apart in the first hard winter, watch this video again. Take notes. Do the math for your specific situation, Because the men in these 3 Quonsets, they did the math. They made the decision. And they have 0 complaints. If this video gave you something useful, a new idea, a real option, a number you didn't have before, let me know in the comments. Tell me your situation. Tell me what you're trying to solve. I read every comment, and I respond to as many as I can. And if you want more content like this, real information about how to survive cold winters, build smart in harsh environments, and make practical decisions about land and shelter, subscribe. That's what this channel is about. No hype, no gimmicks, just what actually works, shown to you straight every single time.